India-Poland relations and what has been discussed today. Very happy to welcome Ambassador Deepak Vora, former Indian ambassador to Poland. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, from the bond of historical goodwill to the strategic partnership that has been announced today, how have you seen India-Polish relations take a new turn during this visit of Prime Minister Modi?
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be back home on Doordarshan, which I consider my mother. I started my career as a broadcaster. I was your ambassador to Poland, that is true, as you have rightly said. Let me put it to you like this. The first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in several years, it's meant to rekindle a relationship. When I was your ambassador there 10, 12 years ago, we had a stable relationship. We had some trade, we had investment from India and Poland, from Poland and India, but there was no excitement in the bilateral relationship. Although a few years before I got there, then President Pratibha Devi Singh Ji Patil had visited Poland, and it was hailed as a path-breaking visit. Nothing of the sort happened because Poland was very, very involved in consolidating its position within the European Union that it had joined and within NATO. And Poland also benefited greatly from EU structural funds, almost $250 billion over 20 years after its accession to the European Union. And then it has become, with 80% per capita of the European average, it's a kind of beacon for other countries of the former Soviet bloc, so to speak, that are looking to achieve a certain level of development. So this visit should create a certain sense of excitement. It has to be followed up. I have no doubt that our outstanding ambassador in Warsaw and my colleagues in the ministry in Delhi will follow up. Now, Poland has talked about defense. Even when I was your ambassador there, they were very keen on selling their defense equipment to us. But they have pretty good technology in that area. But Atmanirbhar Bharat is also a challenge for them. So you heard Prime Minister Donald Tusk talk about it. Let me just give you a personal anecdote, sir. He was also Prime Minister of Poland when I presented my credentials there to the then president. And when I went to see him, he visited India, and he said something which touched me deeply. You know, you mentioned about, your report mentioned about the Jam Sahib of Navanagar, refuge to about 1,000 Polish children, and the Maharaja of Kolhapur, about 5,000 refugees. And he said something very significant. He said to me, he said, Mr. Ambassador, when the world was killing our children, India sheltered them. That was a very powerful statement. And I must say that, you know, I was terribly moved when he said that. And then I reported that to the government in India at that time. So he got a very warm welcome when he was in India. He referred to it constantly. A movie has been made on that. So that's the historical perspective, the humanitarian thing. We used to have trade in rupees with Poland. Now we've switched to hard currency. Now the trade is not very much, $4 or $5 billion, but the potential is there. Not the kind of potential that we have with, say, the United States or with Russia or with Japan or whatever, but certainly it can add to our overall trade. So I would say this is a visit to rekindle, to put back excitement into a bilateral relationship and to tell Poland leaders and its people that the new superpower that has already emerged is called Bharat, and it is here. And I'm going, the Prime Minister would have said, from here to Kiev. This is the first time India, sir, I'm 73 years young. I've been in diplomacy 51 years and counting. The first time I've seen Bharat play a role in conflict zone diplomacy. He went to Moscow when the conflict was going on. Now he's gone to Kiev when that Kursk invasion and all kinds of funny things, drones are being fired at Moscow, etc. is going on. So we have come of age. I think this is a very powerful statement.
Right, and talking about this particular conflict that really shadows the region and much of the world, the statements that have come from the leaders, Prime Minister Tusk saying that India could play a positive role, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterating that battleground is not the place to look for solutions. What are the realistic expectations can we have from Prime Minister's visit to Ukraine, which follows?
I don't think Prime Minister is going to pull a peace plan out of his hat, because everybody and his grandmother and the grandmother's auntie and the auntie's driver have all had their peace plans. We had Turkey, we had China, we had Africa. I think even the Vatican proposed something. Everybody has been talking about a peace plan. The European Union had one. Nothing seems to have worked so far. But what he is going to say, sir, and this is very significant, and I say it slowly so that the millions of people who watch your program, by the way, you're one of the best anchors in the country, people understand that Bharat is trusted by both sides. Otherwise, we wouldn't be going there. None of the other 5 corrupts who sit in the that racket called the United Nations, the 5, I call it the Panchayat of the corrupts who sit in New York. None of them has gone to both countries. Neither Britain nor France nor United States nor China, and of course Russia is a party to the conflict. We are going. It says a lot about India's stature in the world. We are trusted. And the Poles trust us, and they would have told Zelensky, listen to what the Indian Prime Minister says, because he is not taking one side or the other. He is playing a very honest role, a very transparent role, saying, guys, stop. Now, sir, I want to add something, if you give me another minute.
Please.
Prime Minister Modi has gone there just after the virtual meeting of what we call the Global South, the Voice of the Global South. 123 countries participated. China and Pakistan were not invited. They are spoilers at any meeting. Those 125 countries I'm privileged to represent to work in 3 African nations as special advisors. They all ask us, and I'm not being facetious. They say, well, where is Ukraine? Why are we suffering for a conflict that is taking place in Europe? Why are prices going up? Fertilizer prices going up? Why are food prices going up? Hamara kya isme lena hai? You know, there's an African proverb, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Why are we suffering? The Prime Minister will convey this, I believe, to the Ukrainian president, say, look, you are getting a bad name, as it is several countries in the Sahel in West Africa, African countries, have broken diplomatic relations with you because they are suffering for no fault of theirs, and you are messing around at the behest of the French in that area. So he's going to tell him that if you really want the world to support you, then you have to be agreeable to at least talk to the other side on peace.
Right. So I appreciate the compliment that you shared. I want to come back to the exchanges between the two leaders. The areas, particularly in the area of mobility of skilled workforce. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks about social security agreement. We also learned that the diaspora, Indian diaspora in Poland, comprises skilled, semi-skilled workers. For them, how big is this development? But before that, I just want to inform our audiences there are some fresh shots and updates that we are getting from Warsaw. This is Prime Minister Narendra Modi engaging with delegates in Warsaw, Poland. Prime Minister Narendra Modi just a short while ago called on President Duda of Poland. And here, more meetings and engagement follow. On the one side is External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, also accompanied by NSA Ajit Doval. Prime Minister Narendra Modi engaging with the delegates in Warsaw. Ambassador Vora, I come back to you with a question about the significance for the mobility of skilled workforce between India and Poland and what has been agreed between the two nations.
Yep, that's a very valid question. So what is happening? When I was there, you will forgive me for this, but there was a certain amount of arrogance that we detected amongst the Poles. For them, all that mattered was the United States and Poland. That was it. Nobody else mattered. And we didn't have the kind of strength that we possess today. We have the financial strength, we have the economic strength, we have the political acceptability, a number of things. We have the technology, we have the infrastructure, etc., etc. Poland was not able to participate in any of our infrastructure projects. They were busy elsewhere. Then Poland has also recognized that the Chinese dream is over, that Belt and Road Initiative, etc. What it resulted in, and Poland is a signatory, much greater Chinese exports to Poland than Polish exports to China. So they've realized that this is some kind of ploy by the Chinese to find a market for their excess surplus production. So this movement of skilled manpower, sir, the Poles needed to run their factories. They are trying to be a technology-driven nation. Most of the smart Poles, sir, after they joined the European Union, ran away for higher wages to Germany, to England, to America, wherever, to France, etc. So they have a shortage. Now they've realized that India can fill that shortage both in terms of highly skilled workers as well as semi-skilled. This is going to be very, very important. A large number of Indians would be interested in going, not because they are persecuted in India. They will not be refugees. They'll be economic migrants because they get better pay, a better salary. And the Polish are a friendly people. Cold but friendly. They've done nothing to hurt us. We've done nothing to hurt them. I believe that this is something that our people who go there will enjoy. In fact, when I was there, about 100 of our Indian immigrants to Poland had Polish wives. That was very, very nice. But their children had names like Krishna and Radha and Ram, etc. It was wonderful to meet with those kids and with their parents. So this kind of people-to-people contact will also continue.
Your reference to Indian culture also reminds me, sir, the interest that Polish have in Indian culture, Indology, Sanskrit, these are commonly heard areas in Polish universities.
from the 16th century.
Right.
Polish nobility came to India and were totally bowled over by our culture, by our philosophy. And I think the first chair of Sanskrit studies was 1860 or something, like Jagiellonian University. It's tremendous. There's tremendous interest. I think over 500,000 Poles regularly practice yoga. Many of them come. There's the World Yoga Center in the nation's capital. I'm associated with it in New Delhi. Many Poles come there to stay and to practice meditation, to practice yoga, to practice Buddhism. A great deal of interest in that also. So I believe that this kind of a non-political dimension to our bilateral relationship will certainly be strengthened. And so let me tell you, I'm quite sure the Prime Minister would have probably told some of his interlocutors in the one-on-one, why don't you guys also try practicing yoga? It's very good for the health. So, he's the best salesman for Indian culture, for Indian diplomacy, for Indian technology, etc., and for India's requirements. So there's Prime Minister Tusk there. He's sitting down, and I recognize him well. I have a lovely photograph with him. And he's talking about what the future holds for the two countries. But Poland is no longer an exporter of coal and potato. They have got technology, and I think in some areas we would be looking for.
And could one of those areas be clean energy as well? Because green cooperation is significantly focused on by the leaders.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. Both sides want it. Poland certainly does. It's sandwiched there. But now, also, if I may mention, somebody did ask me that why are they so keen on helping Ukraine? Sir, there's a certain guilt complex. Just after the Second World War, there were about almost 1 million Ukrainians living in the reconstituted Poland. Poland had ceased to exist when the Germans attacked from one side and the Soviet Union from the other. For 5 years, there was no Poland. When it was reconstituted after Adolf Hitler had been dispatched wherever he was dispatched, the Poles kicked out the Ukrainians. I think there is a guilt complex involved there. Again, these are things intangibles, saying that now we have to help them because we misbehaved with these guys. That explains the kind of all-out support that they are giving to Ukraine. I think that's the past, but then the past, in Europe at least, continues to weigh heavily on the present. All in all, I think this bilateral visit will inject excitement into our bilateral relationship. And of course, the Prime Minister, by going there, has also reassured the Poles that, look, we don't consider you as just one of those little fellows. We see you as a significant player in Central Europe and one of our key interlocutors. I think the Poles will be very thrilled with this message.
And so we'd also like to learn about the Polish perspective of the strengths of India. Prime Minister Tusk talks about India's advancement in advanced technologies such as AI. There's also digital public infrastructure that India has been making available for a lot of nations. What are the possibilities and areas of convergences there?
I haven't been back in a few years, but when I did go, and I was told later that the UPI, the Unified Payment Interface, the Digital Public Infrastructure, as we say, the BHIM app, it's available in Poland. You can actually shop there and pay in Indian rupees, which is a great thing. So I think he understands that anything to do with information technology, it is Bharat. And sir, the Prime Minister Tusk, Donald Tusk told me himself that they had realized India's power at the time of the Y2K crisis. You might recall that in 2000, all the world's computers were supposed to collapse. And so the whole world came running to us saying, please, please, please help us, send your engineers to sort out the mess. The 2 digits and 4 digits in the computer operating system. And so did Poland. So from that time, they look at us with much greater respect. And this is what Donald Tusk referred to.
Right there. And finally, Ambassador Vora, next, Prime Minister Narendra Modi travels to Ukraine. We've talked about that subject, but your expectations from Prime Minister's visit to Ukraine and the power that India represents today. Prime Minister was in Russia a month ago and now in Ukraine.
I know people say that because the Americans got very upset and they refer to his visit to Russia as controversial. Who made it controversial? What arrant nonsense. It was a bilateral visit, eminently successful. He's going to Ukraine on a bilateral visit. Sir, he is going to a conflict zone. This is the first time I've seen it in my life, that we are going there and saying, guys, stop fighting. He gave that message to Putin openly and in private. He's given the message to Zelensky openly and in private. Now, there's one thing which is of great interest, sir. You might have noticed that till about 6 months ago, every week there would be 5 or 6 NATO or EU leaders or chaps from that sleeping country called the United Nations heading to Kiev. They haven't gone now. And I think Zelensky Sahab is feeling a bit isolated. So he may be ready to talk peace. And the most important thing in international relations is trust, both Ukraine and Russia. Trust India, and in particular, they trust a person called Narendra Bhai Modi.
On that note, thank you very much, Ambassador Deepak Vohra, for spending the time and insights into the story.